Hey there, and welcome to the Recipe Book of Life podcast. I'm Bill Gisclair-Sullivan, founder and senior director of Meditate School of Mindfulness and Sound, and author of the Recipe Book of Life, an SVMT-aligned transformational journey for the heart, mind, body, and soul. And I'm grateful you're here today. Whether you have a book or not, this podcast is a companion to the book, but it's also a companion to life itself, to the messy, beautiful, confusing, sacred, ridiculous, tender, unexpected unfolding of being human. And yes, I said ridiculous. Because if we're going to talk about transformation or healing, mindfulness, moving through grief, aligning with love, regulating the nervous system, the sacred ingredients of life, and the great mystery of life itself, we should probably also be honest enough to admit that sometimes transformation looks less like a glowing monk sitting on a mountaintop and more like standing in the kitchen, wondering why you walked in there while you're holding your phone, while looking for your phone. That too is part of the path. This podcast isn't about becoming perfect, thank goodness, because if perfection were required, I'd have to cancel this podcast before I ever recorded the first episode. This is about becoming present. This is about learning how to listen more deeply. Listen to the body, to the breath, to the heart, to the nervous system. Listen to the stories that shaped us, to the grief that we carry, to the joy we sometimes forget we are allowed to feel, and to the truth beneath the noise. And maybe, most of all, this is about learning to live as though our life isn't a problem to solve, but a recipe still being written. So before we go any further, let's begin the way I like to begin most things, with a pause. I call it a sacred pause, not a dramatic one, not the kind where everyone looks around wondering if the microphone stopped working. Just a simple human pause, an arrival. So wherever you are, whether you're sitting or walking, whether you're driving or folding laundry or making coffee or pretending to clean while mostly moving the same three things from one counter to another, just let yourself arrive a little more fully into the moment. It's so easy. All you have to do is turn to your breath and take a nice breath in and just let it out nice and slow. Allow yourself to feel where your body's being supported, whether it's a chair, whether it's the floor beneath your feet, whether it's the earth beneath the building, the breath moving in and out of your body, without needing you to manage every detail. Allow your shoulders to soften just a little bit, your jaw to loosen. Allow the space behind your eyes to grow quieter. And maybe you feel called to place a hand somewhere on your body, maybe your heart or your tummy, whatever feels natural. And then silently say to yourself softly, I am here. Not perfectly here, not magically peaceful, not suddenly healed of every human irritation, just here. And for this moment, being here is enough. So take one more breath in, exhale nice and slow, and allow yourself to reflect on these intentions. May this time together help us remember what matters. May it soften what's become too tight. May it bring warmth to what's become too guarded. And may it help us listen our way back to truth, love, and presence. So today, I want to begin with what I believe is the first sacred ingredient in the Recipe Book of Life, presence. Not because presence is always easy, it's not. And not because presence means we sit in a perfectly quiet room surrounded by candles, with no one needing anything from us, with no emails, no laundry, no traffic, no bills, no barking dogs, no family dynamics, no random memory from 1987 suddenly arriving to make an announcement. That's not presence. That's a spa brochure. Presence is much more ordinary than that, and much more powerful. Presence is the practice of coming back to what's real now. Not what we fear might happen, not what we wish we had said, not the entire imaginary argument we've already had and rehearsed beautifully in our head, including the perfect comeback that we will absolutely never say out loud. Presence brings us back to this breath, to this body, to this moment, to this choice, to this truth. In the Recipe Book of Life, the teachings are built around the idea that we're always mixing ingredients into the life we're living. Some ingredients we choose consciously. Others were handed to us. Some were passed down through family systems or cultures or religion or grief, trauma, survival, silence, or shame. Some of these ingredients are beautiful: love, kindness, humor, faith, creativity, resilience. Some are harder: fear, defensiveness, over-responsibility, self-abandonment, the need to be liked, the habit of apologizing for having needs, the belief that peace means everyone else is comfortable even if we're not. We all have a recipe, and here's the tender truth. Most of us didn't consciously write the first version. We inherited it. We absorbed it. We adapted to survive. We learned what got us love. We learned what kept us safe. We learned what got us approval in the moment. We learned which parts of ourselves were welcomed and which parts needed to go underground for a while. And then, at some point in life, if we're lucky, or if we cracked open enough, we begin to ask, is this still the recipe I want to live by? Is this ingredient still nourishing me? Is this even still true? And these questions are the beginning of transformation, being curious about these things without judging them. But we can't ask that question honestly without presence. Because without presence, we're not responding to life. We're reacting to history. And that's one of the central teachings in the SVMT Method of Transformation. The body carries the story. The nervous system remembers. The mind creates meaning and stories. And the heart, it longs for truth. And true transformation begins when we become present enough to notice what's actually happening within us and then open a conversation between the mind and the body, the heart and the nervous system. Not to judge what's there, not to shame it, not to immediately fix it, but to notice. And that noticing is sacred. And that's why I call that pause the sacred pause. It's a sacred pause of presence with noticing and a sprinkling of curiosity. Sometimes I think we underestimate the spiritual power of simply noticing. Because we're trained to, or we're taught to, or these gurus say we have to have a big breakthrough. We want the lightning bolt. We want the moment where the clouds part and the angels sing and the old patterns disappear forever and we emerge glowing, emotionally regulated, financially organized, fully hydrated, and no longer irritated by the way someone's chewing. But most transformation is quieter than that. We need to keep it honest. It begins with a moment like, oh, I'm holding my breath. Oh, my shoulders are up around my ears again. Oh, I said yes again, while my whole body was screaming no. Or, oh, I'm not only angry because of this moment, something older has been touched. Or, I'm performing peace, but I'm not actually peaceful. The little O's, those things are sacred. They give us an opportunity. It's the sound of consciousness entering the room. And when consciousness enters the room, the recipe can change. Presence gives us a moment of choice, and that moment of choice may be small, but small isn't insignificant. Think about this. A teaspoon of salt can change the whole soup. And if you've ever accidentally used a tablespoon instead of a teaspoon, you know this isn't just a metaphor. Small things matter. One breath matters. One pause matters. One honest recognition matters. One moment of not abandoning yourself matters. In mindfulness, we often speak of the present moment as if it's always soft and peaceful. But sometimes the present moment is uncomfortable. Sometimes presence means feeling the grief we've been trying to outrun. Sometimes presence means admitting that we're tired. Sometimes it means acknowledging resentment, loneliness, envy, fear, or disappointment. Sometimes it means realizing that the smile we keep offering the world is getting a little too heavy to hold. And this is where we have to be very compassionate with ourselves. Because presence isn't always pleasant. Presence, true presence, is truthful. And truth is not always comfortable at first. But truth is clean. Truth allows energy to move. Truth returns us to alignment. There's a deep kindness in being able to say, this is what's here now. Not the edited version, not the spiritualized version, not the version that sounds good in a workshop, not the version that makes everyone else comfortable. Just this. This is what's here now. In the SVMT method, we talk about the 4 aligned pathways: somatic, vibration, mindfulness, and trance-informed. Somatic reminds us that the body isn't separate from the story, and it's always present in the moment. Vibration reminds us that everything we carry has a frequency, a resonance, a tone, and the energy we put out matters. Mindfulness reminds us that awareness changes our relationship to experiences. And trance-informed practices remind us that we're often living from deeply embedded patterns, beliefs, and inner states that shape how we see ourselves and how we see the world. Presence is the doorway to all 4. When I become present, I can feel the body. When I feel the body, I can sense the vibration of what I'm carrying. When I sense the vibration, I can bring mindfulness to it. And when I bring mindfulness to it, the old trance pattern begins to loosen. This is why presence isn't passive. Presence isn't doing nothing. Presence is a profound act of participation. It's saying, I am willing to meet my life as it is. It's saying, I'm willing to listen before I react. I'm willing to pause before I repeat the old recipe. I'm willing to let truth become part of the healing. And I want to say this gently, because it matters. Present doesn't mean we stay in situations that harm us. Present doesn't mean we override our boundaries. Presence doesn't mean we breathe through something that requires action. Sometimes the most present thing we can do is leave the room. Sometimes the most mindful thing we can do is say no. Sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is stop explaining ourselves to someone committed to misunderstanding us. Presence isn't passivity. Presence is intimacy with truth. And truth has movement. Truth has direction. Truth has a way of leading us back to love, but not always to comfort. As I can honestly admit, for decades of my life, truth seemed foreign to me. I was living a life that was so disconnected from the truth, and I was believing everything that was told. This is why I often say, love is the way and truth is the path. Because the truth changed everything. And the recognition and connection to love matters. Love is the way, truth is the path is a phrase that is so deeply ingrained in the recipe book of life. Because I realize that love without truth can become self-abandonment. And truth without love can become a weapon. But when love and truth walk together, transformation becomes so possible. It changes us. So how do we practice presence? Well, we begin simply. We come back to the body. And no matter how many times we practice this, we need to be reminded from time to time. Coming back to the breath. Coming back to the body. The breath and the body are always in the present moment. The mind has the ability to travel in time. The mind goes to yesterday and tomorrow. Then it jumps back to 10 years ago, and then it moves forward to next Tuesday. And then it jumps to that one conversation we're still editing in our head as though we're going to resubmit it for a better grade. But the body's still here. The breath is here. The heartbeat is here. The sensation in the hands are here. The feet touching the ground are here. This is why somatic awareness is such a powerful part of transformation. Because when we come back to sensation, we come back to now. And now is where change happens. We can plan to change in the future, but now is when we can actually change. Not in the fantasy of who we should be, not in the shame of who we think we failed to become. Now. This breath, this noticing, this choice. So let's take a moment and practice that together. As you sit here breathing, gently notice your body again. And there's no need to make it calm, and that's important. We're not here to force calm. We're here to create contact. Notice your feet if you can feel them. Notice your hands. If you pay attention, you can notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Notice your breath without changing it. And now, gently ask yourself, what is present in me right now? Not what should be present. Definitely not what sounds spiritual. Not what you wish was present. What's actually here? Maybe there's peace. Maybe there's tension. Maybe there's sadness. Maybe there's joy. Maybe there's nothing obvious. Maybe there's just a little internal static, and that counts. Static is information. Now ask, can I let this be here for just one breath without fighting it? Not forever. We're not signing a long-term lease with the feeling. Just one breath. And now, if it feels right, say, I can be with what's here now. Or if that feels too big, I'm learning to be with what's here now. That's presence. It doesn't need to be dramatic and it doesn't need to be complicated, but it is deeply transformational. Because so much of our suffering comes not only from what we feel, but from the war we begin with what we feel. We're sad and then we judge the sadness. We're anxious and then we shame the anxiety. We're angry and then we create a whole identity around whether we're allowed to be angry. We're tired and then we push harder to prove we're not tired. But presence interrupts the war. Presence says, let's listen first. This is one of the reasons I wrote the Recipe Book of Life, because I wanted to offer a way of looking at transformation that felt human, not sterile, not overly clinical, not demanding us to wear sandals and burn incense and robes, and that's okay if that's what you do. But that's pressure. Presence. That's not about floating somewhere above real life, but grounded in the kitchen of being human. Because the kitchen is where so much of life happens. People gather there, stories are told there, arguments happen there, apologies happen there. Grief shows up when you reach for a mug that belonged to someone you loved. Joy shows up when music is playing and someone starts dancing badly but confidently, which is really the best kind of dancing, right? The kitchen isn't separate from the sacred. The ordinary's not separate from authenticity. Our lives aren't separate from the ingredients we keep adding daily. Every day we add something. A little patience, a sprinkling of resentment, a bit of courage, and a lot of avoidance. A cup of compassion with a spoonful of truth, a pinch of fear, and a handful of hope. And presence is what allows us to notice what we're adding before the whole thing is already simmering and we're wondering why it tastes like anxiety with a hint of childhood wounds. Again, not a judgment. We all have our signature dishes, but presence lets us revise the recipe. And here's another thing I want to say in this episode. You're not too late. You're not too old. You're not too damaged. You're not too patterned. You're not too wounded. You're not too much. You're not behind. You're not disqualified from transformation because you've had to begin again and again and again. The spiral of our life isn't a straight line. We return to things. We revisit lessons. We meet familiar patterns at deeper levels of awareness. That doesn't mean we failed. It means we're walking the spiral. You come back to the same grief, but with more tenderness. You may come back to the same fear, but with more tools. You may come back to the same relationship patterns, but with clearer boundaries. You may come back to the same question, but with a little more wisdom. That's transformation. It's not always about becoming someone new. Sometimes it's meeting the same life with a little more loving presence. And sometimes that's everything. So as we continue this journey together, I want this to be the foundation, presence. To recognize we're not here to fix ourselves because we're not broken. We just carry a lot of stuff. We're here to listen ourselves home. Home to ourself. Home to our heart. Home to this body that's carried me through my life. And yes, home to the mind. That is sometimes confounding and confusing, but beautiful. We're here to gather the sacred ingredients that help us live with more honesty, more compassion, more courage, a little bit more humor, more embodiment, and a lot more love. Because humor matters. I really believe that. If we can't laugh at ourselves, at least a little, on this spiritual path, then we're in danger of becoming very intense people with very good vocabulary, and nobody wants to be trapped at dinner with someone who's transcended everything except their need to correct the energy of the room. So yes, on the journey ahead, if you come back to these podcasts and you dive into the book, we will talk about deep things here. We will talk about grief. We will talk about the nervous system. We will talk about love and loss, healing and family, patterns and resonance, silence, aging, transformation, and the strange courage it takes to be honest with ourselves. But we also have to leave room for laughter, because laughter is breath. Laughter is release. Laughter is the body remembering that even in the middle of becoming, we're still allowed to be human. So today, I want to leave you with a simple practice, a recipe, if you will. The recipe of presence. And here are the ingredients. 1 honest breath, a willingness to pause, a body you don't have to judge, a truth you don't have to rush, a moment of kindness, and just enough courage to listen, and maybe a bit of curiosity. That's it. No special equipment required. You don't have to have a certification. There's no perfect meditation cushion for this. There's no need to look serene. You can practice presence in the grocery store. You can practice presence in the car. Just keep your eyes open. You can practice presence before answering a text message that has activated your entire ancestral lineage. You can practice presence when you wake up. You can practice presence before you respond. You can practice presence when you realize you're leaving yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Just pause. Feel the body. Take 1 breath, 1 sacred pause, and ask, what is true now? And then, what would love do with this truth? What would love do with this truth? That question changed my life, and it can change your life. Not all at once, but ingredient by ingredient, breath by breath. What would love do with this truth? So before we close, let's return to the body one more time. Just one more time. You can do this. Just take a slow breath in and just let it out. Feel that breath moving. Feel the support beneath you. Sense the space around you. Feel your own presence. And again, maybe place a hand on your heart or your tummy and let these words land gently. I don't have to fix my whole life in this moment. I can begin with presence. I can begin with 1 breath. I can begin by listening. And I can begin again and again and again. Because beginning again isn't failure, it's practice. And what you practice grows stronger. Beginning again is devotion. It's life inviting us back to the recipe and remembering we are the creator of this recipe. So take 1 more nice deep breath in and exhale nice and slow and easy. And I thank you for joining me on this episode of the Recipe Book of Life podcast. If this reflection spoke to you, I invite you to explore the Recipe Book of Life, where these teachings continue through stories and reflections, practices, reflections on client sessions, and the sacred ingredients for transformation. You can also learn about my work, my courses, retreats, and the SVMT Method of Transformation through Meditate School of Mindfulness and Sound. The links are in the description. This podcast is 1 doorway. The book is another. The school is another. But the real doorway is always within you. So as you move through your day, may you carry presence as your first ingredient. May you pause before abandoning yourself. May you listen before reacting. May you remember that your life is still becoming. And may you trust that even now, even here, even in the ordinary kitchen of your own beautiful, complicated, sacred human life, something good is being made. And may you remember that love is the way, and truth is the path, and the recipe is still being written. I look forward to sharing with you next time on the Recipe Book of Life podcast.